guys, it's Mrs. Curley. This is going to be Thursday's lesson, and we're going to go back to House on Mango Street and do 2 vignettes today. There's not going to be any written assignments for it. You need to be still finishing up your last and final ACT Aspire essay, that is the district assessment over the hero topic. So for that assignment, remember it needs to be 4 paragraphs like we've done before, an introduction that starts with a hook and then narrows to the topic and ends up talking about the idea of heroes in your life and heroes in society. The prompt asked, how do heroes affect people? And that should be your second body paragraph. So you're going to have one body paragraph on someone you admire or someone who you would call your hero that you actually know, and you would be giving a short anecdote or story and many examples of how they have been influential in your life. The second body paragraph would be, how are heroes important in society? So that would be other people maybe who have influential family members. It could be society role models like social media influencers, celebrities, sports heroes, community service people like police officers, firemen, certain politicians, teachers, people who work for religious organizations and have roles as pastors or coaches. So again, there's a wide variety of examples you can use in the second paragraph about how heroes can be important in general, not just the specific one you chose. And then you need a short conclusion. So you should be working on finishing that essay today on Thursday and getting it submitted by tomorrow. So you don't have any other written assignments today other than listening to this lecture and our discussion of Rafaela, who drinks coconut and papaya juice on Tuesdays, which is on page 79. And then the next vignette, Sally, which begins on page 81. So we're going to read those 2 vignettes, and there's notes on the screen that I'm going to add to Google Classroom as well. I'm planning for there to be a House on Mango Street quiz early next week, probably on Tuesday. That will pick up where the last quiz left off. I'll give you some page numbers to review, but it will be over like the last week or so of House on Mango Street discussions. So make sure you catch up. And then there will be a PEA paragraph coming up soon over one of several topics you can choose from this book. So right now, again, let's go ahead and read the first vignette, which starts on page 79. And we're going to have 2 female characters who are introduced today. The first one is called Rafaela, and she is a young married girl who lives on Mango Street. And then there is Sally, and Sally will be in the second vignette that we read. Both of them are new female characters on Mango Street, and Sally, however, will be in multiple vignettes. I think she's in 5 remaining chapters, which is probably half of our remaining sections, that Sally is an important and pivotal character. So pay close attention to her, and you will see her again. Rafaela is only in this one vignette. Okay, so let's go ahead and read Rafaela, who drinks coconut and papaya juice on Tuesdays. Now, obviously, the title, as many of Cisneros' titles, is going to be symbolism. You're probably wondering, why does she drink those juices, and why are those juice names so specific? It is symbolism. And then why on Tuesdays? And you're going to find that out in the beginning section of this chapter, where it talks about why Tuesdays are important to her. Okay, so follow along on page 79 if you want to follow along with me out loud. Rafaela, who drinks coconut and papaya juice on Tuesdays. On Tuesdays, Rafaela's husband comes home late because that's the night he plays dominoes. And then Rafaela, who is still young but getting old from leaning out the window so much, gets locked indoors because her husband is afraid Rafaela will run away since she is too beautiful to look at. Rafaela leans out the window and leans on her elbow and dreams her hair is like Rapunzel. On the corner, there is music from the bar, and Rafaela wishes she could go there and dance before she gets old. A long time passes, and we forget she is up there watching until she says, "Kids, if I give you $1, will you go to the store and buy me something?" She throws a crumpled dollar down and always asks for coconut or sometimes papaya juice, and we send it up to her in a paper shopping bag she lets down with clothesline. Rafaela, who drinks and drinks coconut and papaya juice on Tuesdays and wishes there were sweeter drinks, not bitter like an empty room, but sweet, sweet like the island, like the dance hall down the street where women much older than her throw green eyes easily like dice and open homes with keys. And always there is someone offering sweet drinks, someone promising to keep them on a silver string. Okay, so as you can tell, that was a really short chapter about Rafaela, but it was, again, highly symbolic. And at this point in the book, you probably should have already heard some connections to other motifs that we've had in other vignettes. For example, you probably might have picked up on references to windows that were in here a couple of times. Give me $1, which kind of reminded you maybe of Bum Man. And again, the idea of music and the dance hall. And so we've had that before with the music box. So we see that Cisneros is now starting to weave pretty regularly some of these symbols that have been in other vignettes, and you should be starting to see connections. So let's go through some of the notes that I have typed out here and talk through some of these main points, because there are a lot of things in this very short chapter. Now, obviously, her husband and her marriage seems to be a major problem. We don't know exactly, again, if it's violent, but we know it is controlling. Again, someone who is highly controlling is also considered to be abusive in a relationship if they keep you imprisoned in some way. That can still be done today through people who maybe stalk their spouse, control their access to money or to freedom, limit their access to friends or family. And all of those things are very big red flags that the relationship is not healthy. And that maybe it's too controlling. So again, Rafaela, because maybe she was young and impressionable, married somebody who ended up not being a very good partner. Her husband controls her out of jealousy, and that's introduced in like this bulleted point right here. He says that he locks her indoors because she's too beautiful to look at, which indicates that he thinks she's going to cheat on him or go find a new boyfriend, and he doesn't trust her. So he literally locks her in the apartment, and it's mentioned she has no key. Now, as far as why can't she get out, I mean, I think it's more symbolism than it is actually her trying to unlock the door. So we don't need to get bogged down in why doesn't she call 911? Because again, I think it's more indicative of the whole relationship that she's fearful of her husband and she doesn't know how to leave him. And maybe she does love him, so she doesn't want to leave him. And that is very typical in abusive relationships. He goes out on Tuesdays to play dominoes with his friends. So the reason why the title says she can only drink those juices on Tuesdays is because Tuesdays is symbolic of the day she has freedom. It's the day her husband leaves her alone in the evening where she can actually lean out the window and have contact with the outside world. Also, the idea of the coconut and the papaya juice is very symbolic. Also, she could have asked for water. She could have asked for lemonade. She could have asked for a margarita. But instead, she's asking for coconut and papaya juice, which again are tropical fruits. And the idea of the tropical island or the beach is often synonymous with freedom. And so she's asking for freedom on the day that she's allowed to have freedom, which is only on Tuesdays because he's not there to supervise her. Now, his jealousy, for some reason, keeps her very controlled, where she's not allowed to have friends. She's not allowed to leave the apartment. She's not given keys. She doesn't have access to much money. And so she's kind of imprisoned. But she's said to be very young and very beautiful. Now, again, if you notice, there's a really common motif that she's trapped, and we see the trapped condition with the reference to the window, which we could probably, if you remember, compare to Esperanza's great-grandmother, which is back on page 11. So on page 79, it says she's getting old from leaning out the window so much. And it also says she leans on the window and leans on her elbow and dreams her hair is like Rapunzel. Now, if you remember back on page 11, there was a reference to the great-grandmother Esperanza, and it said that she looked out the window her whole life and leaned her sadness on an elbow. So Cisneros is, again, trying to remind us through very similar wording that this girl, Rafaela, is trapped in a loveless marriage, a dysfunctional relationship, the same way that great-grandmother Esperanza felt trapped. The window is a barrier where she can see things on the other side, but she can't get to it. Additionally, she's in an upper level apartment. So apparently if she's locked in, she can't jump out the window. Again, let's not get bogged down on why doesn't she call 911? I don't even know if she has a phone, but that's not the point. The point is that it's symbolism that she can't get free of the controlling nature of her husband. And maybe she's too scared to leave him. So again, unlike Mamacita, in the last chapter, we also had the reference to a doorway, how she wouldn't go outside the doorway. Mamacita was trapped by her own fears. Nobody was making her stay in the apartment. In fact, her husband wanted her to get out of the apartment and make friends and learn the language. But she, for some reason, was paralyzed by this idea that she could not give up her own culture and did not want to adjust to this new life. So her own psychological condition and her own fears imprisoned her. Now, Rafaela's case, it's not her own fears that imprison her. It's her marriage. And her marriage is very controlling, and that's the thing that keeps her trapped. So again, there's also an allusion, if you remember, that's Allusion. It's down here in the notes. That's a literary term we've used this year, referring to a reference to another text. And in this case, we have a literary character that you probably referenced, which is Rapunzel. And you might have thought of the Disney movie or of the movie Tangled, which is, again, a similar comparison. But again, if you know the story of Rapunzel, she's a beautiful princess. Her hair was very long. She threw it out the upper story of a castle so a prince could climb up her hair like a rope and save her because she was imprisoned there. Now, again, this reference to Rapunzel indicates that she is also a young and beautiful princess, but she's trapped in a tower, and the apartment upper story is like the tower, and she needs somebody to rescue her, and she dreams that somebody will rescue her the way the prince rescued Rapunzel. Now, the contact with Esperanza is simply that every Tuesday she'll lean out the window and try to talk to kids who are walking down on the bottom floor and get them to get her some drinks from the store down the street and put them up in her apartment in a paper sack, and she pulls it up on a rope. So she throws $1 down to go buy the tropical drinks and send them up to her. So again, like we said earlier, the dreams of freedom are represented by several things. The coconut and papaya juice, because it says on page 80, she throws a crumpled dollar down and always asks for coconut or sometimes papaya juice. And again, she always dreams of the sweeter drinks that are not bitter, like an empty room. It also mentions that, again, she dreams of dance halls. Again, if she hears the music on the corner, there is music from the bar, and she wishes she could go there and dance before she gets old. So as Rafaela dreams of music, because music is freedom, and if you remember the reference to the music box, it also made Esperanza feel free to have the beauty of music. We also, again, have had that, like with Chanclas, when she was dancing with her Uncle Nacho at the first cousin's baptismal reception, and the music made her feel beautiful and free. So in this vignette also, music is kind of this portal to freedom that she wishes she could get to. She can hear the music down the street, but she's not allowed to go to it. Just like she can picture freedom, but she's not allowed to obtain it. It also mentions that she wants to have keys to open homes, and it indicates she's not even given a key. And so on page 80, it says, again, she wishes she were like the other women who could open homes with keys. And the keys, again, would be the idea of freedom, because she could come and go as she desires rather than be kept prisoner. The ending of the chapter indicates, again, the things that other women have that she does not, the sweeter drinks, and someone promising to keep them on a silver string, again, indicating that she desires that better treatment that she knows other women have, but that she does not. Now, we never hear about her again. We don't know if she ends up getting a better relationship with her husband, if she leaves her husband, or if something tragic happens to her. But I think at this point in the book, it's a huge transition to seeing dysfunctional female marriages and relationships and home lives. We're going to see quite a bit of dark thematic ideas come up in the next few vignettes. So again, I think that was foreshadowed a little bit when we had the, again, vignette earlier that some people said seemed like it was kind of dark about Sire and the Earl of Tennessee. So a lot of people on the discussion board were making comments about, I think something bad's going to happen. And I think you're definitely on the right track with that. We're turning to maybe a less fun part of the book where they're not just jump roping and talking about growing up and talking about clouds and laughing and going in with $5 bets to buy a bicycle. Instead, we're getting into more serious themes now about women who are abused, about marriages that are dysfunctional, about control, about safety. We had a little bit of a hint of that with Alicia, who sees mice. And we kind of came up with the idea that her father might be abusing her, but then we just went on to lighter topics again. But now that we've had those sprinkled in ideas of bum man is scary, Alicia might be abused, now we're going to get into pretty regularly, each chapter is going to be pretty serious as we finish the book. And that kind of leads us into our next character, Sally, who's going to be in 5 vignettes. And we've never had anyone in 5 vignettes besides Esperanza and maybe Rachel and Lucy by the end of the book. So Sally is going to be a new friend that Esperanza apparently meets at school, because she talks about seeing her at school with boys. And she seems much more worldly and exotic than Esperanza, who always describes herself, like compared to the 4 skinny trees, as being pointy and maybe awkward. And she sees Sally as being glamorous. So again, I think you'll be able to see some similarities to Marin with Sally, although Marin might have been a little older. So let's go ahead and read the vignette Sally, which starts on page 81 to 83, and be trying to figure out through the word choice, which we call diction, what traits do you already pick up that Sally has? Because we don't have a lot of plot in this chapter. It's just a lot of description about the way that Esperanza sees her, the way she dresses, etc. So go ahead and turn to page 81 if you want to follow along with me. We're going to read the next vignette, Sally, and introduce one of our next major characters in this book. Page 81, Sally. Sally is the girl with eyes like Egypt and nylons the color of smoke. The boys at school think she's beautiful because her hair is shiny black like raven feathers, and when she laughs, she flicks her hair back like a satin shawl over her shoulder and laughs. Her father says to be beautiful is trouble. They are very strict in his religion, and they are not supposed to dance. He remembers his sister and is sad, and then she can't go out. Sally, I mean. Sally, who taught you to paint your eyes like Cleopatra? And if I roll the little brush with my tongue and chew it to a point and dip it in the muddy cake, the one in the little red box, will you teach me? Oh, I like your black coat and those shoes you wear. Where'd you get them? My mother says to wear black so young is dangerous, but I want to buy shoes just like yours, just like your black ones made of suede, just like those. And one day, when my mother's in a good mood, maybe after my next birthday, I'm going to ask her to buy the nylons too. Cheryl, who is not your friend anymore, not since last Tuesday before Easter, not since the day you made her ear bleed, not since she called you that name and bit a hole in your arm and you looked as if you were going to cry and everyone was waiting, but you didn't. You didn't, Sally. Not since then. You don't have a best friend to lean against the schoolyard fence with, to laugh behind your hands at what the boys say, and there's no one to lend you a hairbrush. The stories the boys tell in the coat room, they're not true. You lean against the schoolyard fence alone with your eyes closed as if no one is watching, as if no one could see you standing there, Sally. And what do you think about when you close your eyes like that? And why do you always have to go straight home after school? You become a different Sally. You pull your skirt straight and rub the blue paint off your eyelids. You don't laugh, Sally. You look at your feet and walk fast to the house you can't come out from. Sally, do you sometimes wish you didn't have to go home? Do you wish your feet would one day keep walking and take you far away from Mango Street, far away, and make your feet stop in front of a house, a nice one with flowers and big windows and steps for you to climb up 2 by 2 upstairs to where a room is waiting for you? And if you opened the little window latch and gave it a shove, the windows would swing open and all the sky would come in, and there'd be no nosy neighbors watching and no motorcycles and cars, no sheets and towels and laundry, only trees and more trees and plenty of blue sky. And you could laugh, Sally. You could go to sleep and wake up and never have to think who likes you and doesn't like you. You could close your eyes and you wouldn't have to worry what people said because you never belonged here anyway. And nobody would make you sad and nobody would think you're strange because you like to dream and dream. And nobody could yell at you if they saw you out in the dark leaning against a car, leaning against somebody without someone thinking you're bad, without someone saying it's wrong, without the whole world waiting for you to make a mistake when all you wanted, Sally, was to love and to love and to love and to love, and no one would call that crazy. Okay, in this vignette, there's a lot of internal dialogue where Esperanza's just kind of thinking in her mind about this new friend and telling us about it. It's not necessarily her speaking out loud. So obviously Sally is a girl at school. We know that because she says references like on page 81, she says, the stories the boys tell in the coat room about you are not true. You lean against the schoolyard fence alone. Why do you always go home right after school? Obviously, that implies that she's met her at school. Now, again, in the first paragraph, it describes her appearance. And there's a kind of a reference to Marin because Marin was also described as wearing dark nylons. And she wore lots of Avon makeup because she sold Avon. And we knew that she was very interested in making herself attractive. And she was a very pretty teenage girl who wanted to marry someone to save her. Now, similarly, Sally also wears nylons and is described as being the color of smoke, which means dark or black. And then also her eyes are like Egypt and also compared to Cleopatra, who traditionally the Cleopatra character is seen to have very heavy eyeliner. And so it implies that she wears a lot of makeup. And her hair is also described as black like raven feathers. Now, all of those references to black as well as to the raven are negative connotation. So again, if you think about in literature, bird references, a black bird is typically evil or bad luck, whereas a dove, which is white, would be typical of peace. And so here we have raven, and that's not a good sign. And we have the idea of all the makeup and the black nylons. And you might get a picture in your mind that she's sort of worldly and much more experienced than innocent Esperanza. But once again, we see Esperanza, much like in the chapter Sire, much like how she related to Marin, she thinks Sally is so cool. She thinks Sally is exotic. Sally is beautiful. And she's intrigued by her style. And she wants Sally to teach her things, which we might be thinking that's not a good idea, which means she wants to emulate her behavior. I think at this point, you might be able to realize that Sally has much more experience with boys, and maybe she's having some questionable flirtation. She's seen leaning up against cars and boys gossiping about her behavior. And Esperanza seems to think she's innocent and says, you're not like that. The boys are making up all these stories about you. And we would probably have to question who Sally is and are those rumors true? Or is Esperanza just being naive and she doesn't really get it that Sally has a bad reputation? And maybe why is Sally acting that way? There's always a motive if a teen girl is kind of acting out in rebellion. What's going on? I think all those questions are left unanswered in this vignette, and we're going to see more about her story because she's in 4 other chapters. But again, we go back to Esperanza up here in the notes is once again intrigued by Sally's style, much like how she admired Marin and said Marin taught her all those things, like how many flecks on your fingernail tell how many boys are thinking of you, etc. However, with all the references to alleys and darkness and cars and gossiping and makeup and the color black, I think we should be able to infer that something's going on with Sally that's maybe not very safe. And that maybe she's not like a Lucy and a Rachel friend. Maybe it's not a good idea for Esperanza to want to spend that much time with her. It does appear that Sally has a difficult home life. It mentions her father as being religious but very strict, and he doesn't let her go outside a lot. And there's several mentions to that, where again she says she can't go out, Sally, on page 81. And also on page 82, she says, why do you always have to go home straight after school? You become a different Sally. You pull your skirt straight. You rub the blue paint off your eyelids. You don't laugh. You look at your feet and walk to the house you cannot come out from. So it appears that Sally takes off her makeup, pulls her clothes down, makes herself look more modest and presentable. And then when she's home, she's very unhappy for some reason and seems to be a different character, and maybe gets very quiet, looks at the ground, and doesn't come out. And so we should be questioning at this point what's going on in her home life. And that's not revealed yet, but you might have some suggestions you want to put on the discussion board about things you might be able to make some guesses about foreshadowing. Again, Esperanza wants to buy the same things. Like, I like your shoes. I like your black coat. I'm going to ask my mom to buy nylons like yours. But there is a warning that her mother has already said, where she even mentions on page 82, my mother says to wear black so young is dangerous. And again, we could tell that maybe Sally is dangerous because she dresses that way. And I think the author's trying to make that connection of that trait for us, but Esperanza is ignoring those warnings, like we've also seen in the chapter Sire. Now, I think we also need to figure out from the ending of the chapter that Sally and Esperanza do have something in common. Can you figure out what it is? Because it's not necessarily that they have the same life experience. Esperanza maybe is not as beautiful and glamorous. She doesn't have boyfriends and experiences in that way, but there's something that makes her feel they have a connection. And at this point, when she says things like, do you wish your feet would walk away from Mango Street and take you far away? And she says things like on page 82, don't you wish that you could come to a nice house with flowers and a big window and steps for you to climb up? And don't you want to open the little window latch and give it a shove and the windows would swing open and all the sky would come in? I think the similarity between her and Sally is that Sally is also unhappy, and Sally doesn't like Mango Street and doesn't like her life. And Esperanza, as we've known from the beginning of the book, wants to escape and wants freedom. And she finally sees someone who also feels that same way, who just wants to get out of there. Rachel and Lucy and Nenny, they all seem pretty content. They're not unhappy. And then she meets Sally and she realizes here is someone else who has this deep-rooted desire to escape, and they understand me. But I think what's important is that the girls want to leave Mango Street for different reasons. And you'll find out more about Sally's story, so I don't want to give you any spoilers. But we know that Esperanza is not unhappy with her home life, that her father and mother seem like they're very close to her. So she doesn't go to a house she doesn't want to come out from, like Sally. But they both have this desire to escape. And I think she feels that Sally understands her in a deeper way than maybe Rachel and Lucy do. Now, what's also interesting, and I didn't put this in the notes yet, is that Rachel and Lucy sort of disappear at this point in the book, in this junction. Sally is going to become her new BFF. And when she's hanging around with Sally, as you often see in junior high and high school, the other people get dropped. And so Rachel and Lucy are not going to be in the book for the next few chapters because everything's going to be about Esperanza hanging out with Sally. And she's obviously going to be much more intrigued with this new, more exotic, maybe slightly older friend. And she's probably not hanging out playing jump rope with Rachel and Lucy anymore. Now, as you can probably imagine, this also indicates her movement from the child to the adult world, because Rachel and Lucy obviously symbolize more of the child innocent world, like dress up, imaginative play, jump roping, etc. And here is Sally, who's hanging out with boys, wearing heavy makeup, wearing more seductive clothing, wearing the color black and described like a raven. And that's going to be much more adult world related than her younger friends. So at this point in the book, we know that she feels a connection to Sally's desire to leave, and she feels that's going to make them best friends. But we should probably be wondering, is this a safe choice? Is this a friend who's really going to help her? Is this a friend who's going to harm her? So that's where we leave off, a little bit of a cliffhanger. Today, I want you to also, for your discussion board post, it's going to count as your attendance, and I'll put this in Google Classroom, is I want you to make a comment about one of these 2 vignettes, either something that you noticed, something that you have a question about, or something that you saw for symbolism or foreshadowing. And feel free to reply to other students' comments. I have been so impressed with all the comments that you all have been posting this week, and I really thought the discussion board has made it seem a little more interactive. Some of you have written paragraphs and lots of great in-depth statements about some of these characters or about how you've made inferences, and all of you have been very, very insightful. So I've been enjoying reading those comments each day. So again, that's all for today, and you should be finishing up your essay for the written assignment and trying to submit that 2-page document where you're typing the essay in the box about heroes, and then I'll be scoring those next week. So thank you so much for watching. Remember, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell for more notifications if you like it. Bye.